everyone, and welcome to the debut edition of the Collection Comic of the Week. This was formerly a blog post that I would put on my Facebook page, chronicling the various comic books that I have throughout my collections of thousands and the sentimental value and the story behind acquiring the comic. And I thought, well, maybe better if I brought this to my YouTube account. Because this is a brand new set of videos for all of my viewers out there, I thought for the first month I will be chronicling various books that were my first exposure to various characters that have stuck with me and that I have loved throughout my 20 plus years of enjoying comic books. So with that, the first issue here on the Collection Comic of the Week is Green Lantern number 86 from 1997. The writer was Ron Marz. The pencils are Jeff Johnson. And this was my very first exposure to the Green Lantern character of any kind. This was, when this was out, Hal Jordan was deceased at this point. So the very first Green Lantern that I ever knew of was not Hal Jordan, but rather Kyle Rayner. And it wasn't until later on in that year, I bought this in 1997. It wasn't later on until 1997 when I was able to acquire some older Green Lantern books that I was even aware of Hal Jordan's existence. So Kyle, for the longest time, was my guy. I remember that I picked up this book back in the days when Walmart still had tons of comic books, or at least a good number of them, still on their newsstands, either in the front of the store with the magazines or in the toy section. I think I remember this one was one of the various Walmarts in my area we went to where this was with the magazines. But back in those days, I would always flip to the very end of the book because Walmart, wasn't like the direct market where you could go. You always knew what you were going to get. You didn't always know that there was going to be that title with availability at the local Walmart, so I would always have to spoil the book for myself and look to the end to make sure that the particular comic book that I was buying had a conclusion. And I was kind of going through my normal favorites that day, and Batman, X-Men, Spider-Man, up to that point, Superman as well, to a lesser extent, and even Robin, which we'll get into. I was a really big fan of the solo Robin book, but that's another discussion for another episode. And I'd heard of Green Lantern, didn't really know much about him at the time, and lo and behold, this one had a conclusion. So let's check some of the artwork inside the book. I remember right out of the gate when I saw Green Lantern being able to make the constructs and just making a giant dragon out of his power ring. I just thought that this was awesome, and I knew right away that I was going to become a Green Lantern fan because something like this was just really, really cool for me. This was also my first exposure to another character in the Green Lantern mythos that I didn't really understand the lore at the time, but it was also my first exposure to the character Jade, who was the daughter of Alan Scott, the Golden Age Green Lantern, and didn't really know who Alan Scott or Jade was, but, I saw this green lady making big constructs out of, and I thought that was just pretty cool. I was 6, 7 years old at the time, so I feel like I can be a little forgiven for being taken in by neat stuff like that, but still, it's just pretty neat. I loved it. And just kind of her first exposure to Kyle, and they're apparently going to live together. It was a little more adult themed than I'm normally used to with comic books, because I was buying, a lot more, a little bit more kid-friendly books, especially something like that. I had to make sure that my mother or grandmother did not see this whenever I was thumbing through the comic. But yeah, this was my first exposure to a lot of the Green Lantern mythos, and something that would influence a lot of my comic fandom going as I got older. Another thing that I thought was really cool about Green Lantern whenever I was first getting into him at this time was that he didn't put on his costume like Batman or Spider-Man did, but rather he just kind of made his costume appear out of the the power ring, and I just, again, I thought that was kind of neat, and just thought it was cool, and really enjoyed it, and kind of see the end of the issue, and of course, it has a conclusion, or at least somewhat of a conclusion, and that's why I end up buying it, and the rest, as they say, is history. As I said, this was my first exposure to any portion of the Green Lantern mythos, and from there, I became a huge fan. I just always thought that Green Lantern was cool. Yeah, I know the movie wasn't all it was cracked up to be, but I think he's one of the most underrated heroes with one of the most underrated mythoses everywhere, with just several different characters that, donning the costume or donning the power ring. It's a very diverse group, and I just love everyone from John Stewart to Hal Jordan to my first Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner. Green Lantern's one of my all-time favorites, and it all began with Volume 2, Issue 86. Do you also own this issue of Green Lantern? Let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share, subscribe for more content, not just from the world of comic books, but from the world of gaming, wrestling, anime, and all things geek culture. Go follow me on all my social media pages, facebook.com/athleticgeek89, Twitter @athletic_geek89, and Instagram @athleticgeek89. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.